I appreciate that. Happy Saturday. Happy August. It's probably going to sound a little bit different because I was experimenting with this mic last night and I was trying to get rid of the tinny noise. So I've had to boost the gain on this microphone since I started doing the live streams just so you could hear me fine. But after experimenting last night and placement, and you notice I have this fairly long beard, I've had to have the mic down below my beard. At some point, I'm gonna get a different boom style mic for the desk here, but the workaround for right now is I have this long beard. I'm gonna use it, so I got the mic clipped right to my beard, and let me know how it sounds. If it sounds less tinny to you, when I was playing it back last night to try to do some tweaking with the microphone settings, I realized that it's probably going to sound more like my natural voice. So if you're wondering what I sound like, we're getting really close to it. Okay, so we made it through the month of July, and I'm just viewing everybody that's coming into the chat. So it's nice to see a lot of the regulars. I appreciate your support and spending these hours with me on Saturday morning. So we got Shawnee Groves. I'm curious, Shawnee, are you out in the garden today, and how did it go with the rain? We've gotten a significant amount of rain here, so we're just about an hour south of the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, and hasn't been raining hard, but we got quite a bit of rain. So I always love it when we get these rain events because then it's less work on my end for making sure plants are watered. Mother Nature's taking it, right? So not as much irrigation. Um, they get the water they need, and actually, it's better water than what's coming up out of my well anyway. So, but Shawnee's with us. I see Dave from Bowtie Life. Thanks for joining us today. Uh, JBot Ecology Today is here with us up in Ontario. Sarah Johnson, hi to you too. So I see Dave from Bowtie Life says, I'm stoked. I'm actually here on time. Mrs. Bowtie is healing, but got her clean bill of health. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So as more come to join us this morning, that's fantastic and welcome. We're into the beginning of August, so I'm curious what you have growing right now in your gardens. I'm going to share something a little bit different today. I announced last week the content was going to be changing slightly. I'm still going to be getting into the plant nerd information, which is something I really enjoy. It, and from hearing your comments and feedbacks, it sounds like you enjoy some of the plant nerd stuff too. But I'm also incorporating more of what I do with my day-to-day operations, working with senior living communities. So I hope you grab some coffee. I have my coffee right here because we're actually going to be doing some math here in a little bit. I want I was trying to think of how I could format today to where I could bring you we could kind of uh, we could kind of set it up like you'd be shadowing me sort of. So we're going to be doing a little bit of troubleshooting and a little bit of math, but it's not scary math. It's something that you may have heard of before, but we're going to delve into. So um, this is going to be exciting, and I'm really interested to hear what you think about when we get to the end of the live stream here today. So Dave from Bowtie says, I'm watching the yellow bell pepper ripen at the moment. That's fantastic. That's exciting. I always love it when the bell peppers or peppers in general start to blush or the color starts to break. That's one of my favorite parts of the pepper plant's journey, besides the flowering. So I think I've mentioned this before, but certain pepper plants, I grew a purple cayenne pepper. I haven't grown it in a few years now, but that was one of the first ornamental pepper plants that I grew that I actually uh, it was a meaningful moment for me because that's the first pepper plant that I saw that not only could you get a really beautiful purple cayenne pepper out of it, but the flower actually had purple petals. And then when you looked at the main stem of that plant, you'd actually see purple streaks in it. If you flip the leaves over, you could see some purple in the veins on the leaves. It's just a beautiful plant. And that's not the only plant that's like that, uh, but that was the first experience I had with a plant like that, where it's just seeing the beauty of that plant. Um, but yeah, pepper. I could think of like tomatoes too. There's certain plants like that where you get that variegated that color in those the fruits. It's a beautiful experience, and those are the types of experiences that I enjoy sharing with everybody else. So thank you for sharing that, David. Uh, Jay from Ecology Today says many tomatoes, many bush beans, rhubarb. Still got the rhubarb, fantastic. And zucchini, yep. Kohlrabi. Kohlrabi is a fun plant. I don't grow that every year. I grew that for a customer uh, maybe 2 or 3 years ago as a request, and it did fine in the grow bags. I grew those in 3-gallon grow bags. Um, it's just an interesting plant. The first time I saw kohlrabi, I thought it was like an alien, some type of alien food, but it's a very, very, very cool looking plant. Yes, and thank you for the tip, Jay. Jay says if the stream freezes, hit the reload and then speed it up to catch up. Yep, I appreciate that. Uh, Stop saying purple so much. Mrs. Bowtie is gonna want one. It's a beautiful plant. I know you're into hot peppers, so that's one of those plants. If you haven't grown, I recommend growing it at least once. Uh, Jay also says pepper, Swiss chard, several kale plants, potatoes, many squashes, turnips, turnips. And I haven't grown turnips. That's one plant I've never grown. I may grow, grow it one day just to say I grew it, but I have never had requests for turnips. But many carrots. Yep, we got carrots growing here too. Lots of cucumbers. So this is my this is my favorite time of the year. August, late July into August, and then even into early September, because this is in in my opinion, all the work that we've done in the spring to set up our summer plants, this is like when we get to start harvesting them full time. So for like cucumbers, I'm harvesting cucumbers every couple days, and different cucumber varieties will produce at different rates. But just for my pickling cucumber that I grow, for example, that plant, as long as the plant remains healthy and well fed and watered, it will pump out dozens of fruits or cucumbers per plant. So when we get into this time of the year, it's really exciting because the summer plants like those cucurbits or even the tomatoes, they're just pumping out. So we get to taste the fruit of our labor, so to speak. But okay, so let's jump in today. So like I said, I want to take you on a little tour adventure with me. I was trying to think of when I was going to share the these this experience earlier this year. So what had happened was I went to meet a director at a senior living community, and that director they actually had a couple indoor gardens that they asked me to check out. So I had I brought a couple of pieces of equipment that I had. One was my smartphone, so I could take some pictures, and then the other one was a power meter. And earlier this year when I started all my seeds under lights, I had talked a little bit about the par meter. So it's just basically a tool that I use to check the quantity of light that's hitting a plant. So having said that, I brought those two tools with me, and I met the director. Got to see their gardens, and I'm gonna leave names out of this, so we'll just take the names out of it. The name of the equipment, I'm not gonna mention it, uh, but I will say he was concerned because they had LED grow lights, but the plants were kind of struggling. So when I saw the gardens, I immediately saw that there could be an issue with the type of LEDs they had there. And from my experience, if you grow indoors, there's quite a few changes or variables that you have to control as a gardener. So when we grow plants outside in the garden, we we I don't want to say I take the sunlight for granted, but you have this natural cycle with the sun. So in the springtime, uh, the days are starting to get longer, and then even in a 24-hour cycle, the the sun's intensity is going to change throughout the day, right? So sun comes up in the morning. By noon, you have, or just after noon, you have the most intense light you're going to have for the day. And then as the day progresses, the intensity lowers. There's some other things that can change the quantity of light that you have in your garden or wherever you're growing outdoors. So if you have an overcast day like we've had for today's overcast again also, but for the last couple of days, overcast days, the the light intensity is going to be less, of course. If you have shade from an oak tree and you're trying to grow a plant underneath that, or maybe a building or structure, something like that's going to cast shade at some point in the day, then the light intensity is going to be lower. That all makes sense. So when we grow plants indoors, whether it be like seedlings when you're trying to start seeds, or maybe you have a mature established plant, like a strawberry plant, or maybe even like these Thai basil that's over my shoulder here, then from my perspective, I'm I'm trying to set that plant up for success by giving it as much light as it needs, but not any more or any less. So we're not going to be able to mimic the sun's arc through the sky indoors, but if we can give the plant enough of the light that it needs, it can still grow just fine. So when I showed up to the senior living community, I had a little bit of background information on what was going on. They basically purchased two kits. So imagine standing grow beds or planter beds, and there wasn't really a lot to it. So just basically a stand with the bed with peat moss, some plants established in there, and then a couple of strips of LED lights overhead. And I could see that some of the plants were not very happy. They're struggling. So I used my par meter to check to see how much light was coming in, and that's something that I am going to be showing here in a little bit. But before we do, I wanted to go over a few terms, and these may be terms that you've heard before, but if not, then welcome to the world of plant and light science. And don't let any of the terms scare you. In fact, I don't typically think about these every day. It's nice foundational information to know. And then if you do decide to start growing more indoors, then this is really good reference information to have for you. So the first thing that I want to show you is this right here. So I spent some time getting this set up too, but we have PPFD. It's a fancy acronym for photosynthetic photon flux density. How many of you have ever heard of this term before? That's what I'm curious to know. PPFD or photosynthetic photon flux density. So we have that the PPFD, and then I have this kind of goofy looking unit off to the right of that. So if you've never seen that before, the little the U that you see right there with the little tail, that's micro. Now we're kind of jumping into the chemistry world because when I took chemistry in college, this is like all we dealt with was moles, metric system. And as a side note, I love the metric system because it makes conversions like really simple, especially if you're going from different types of units of measure. You're base 10 in the metric system, so um, part of me wishes that the metric system was more embraced in the United States. It's not, but once I started working with it a lot through my college science classes, I really appreciate it. But back to that unit off to the right. So we have micromole per the m with the 2 and the exponent is meter square. So if you think of a meter square meter, and then the s is for second. So all this is to say is that this PPFD that I'm talking about is how much light a area is getting in that unit of micromoles per meter or square meter per second. So that's all we need to know is over 1 second, how much light intensity or the quantity of light is actually hitting this square meter in 1 second. So that's the first thing. And if you've never heard of that term, that's perfectly fine. If you do see that in any type of literature, or we're talking about if you're looking into buying grow lights, you'll see that term come up, and you'll see a bunch of numbers with it. So different manufacturers express that differently, but you'll usually see like a chart, and it'll show you numbers in like uh, this example of that square meter. So you might see like I don't know, like 1,000 in the middle, and then as you get further out to the outside of that growing area, the numbers are going to go smaller or less. But if you do grow professional or buy professional grow lights, you're going to see that term again. So that's all. Just wanted to expose you to that one. So this next term is photoperiod, and if you grow any type of plants that have a life cycle that is influenced by uh, the amount of daylight in the day or photoperiod, then you're probably already familiar with this term. And so photoperiod is just the amount of hours the plant receives light in a day. So some plants that we grow up here in the northern part are like onions would be one type of plant that would be affected by this. So um, if you're up here in the northern part of the United States or even in Ontario or across Canada, that's something if you're growing outside to be aware of because we definitely have longer days. So that's something to know. This next term is a DLI, daylight light, daily light integral is the total amount of usable light for a plant in a day. So just with these terms that we've gone over already, you can kind of see where we're going. We're going to get to a mathematical equation here very shortly, and that's something that when I start showing you these photos, you'll see like, oh, okay, this makes this makes sense. So daily light integral, this term isn't used all the time, and honestly, it's not something I typically like actually look at when I'm growing indoors with my seedlings and getting plant starts running. But you'll see when you get to the mathematical term or the mathematical equation, you'll see how this kind of plays in. I'm kind of doing this on the fly anyway. I have my numbers or where I want plants to be at as far as the light exposure they're getting. And when I started doing these live streams earlier this year, I talked a little bit about a couple different grow lights I have. One's a T5 high output system, and then the other one was a new LED light fixture that I was. This was the second year I think I've used that. So I was kind of comparing the difference on the PPFD, or the PAR, the photosynthetic active radiation that plant's giving off. So I don't expect you to go out and get a PAR meter, but that's what I was using in that live stream. Is I was actually using my little PAR meter hooked up to my smartphone. The smartphone has an app on it with a graph, so I can do a data logging. So I could actually put that PAR meter like somewhere where the plants are and let it sit for 12 hours and see how much light that was getting. I don't really have to do that indoors though, because indoors the light's going to be consistent. But if I want to check, like, I don't know, a raised bed outside, I could actually leave that meter in the grow bed, come back in 12 hours or even a day later, and then I could plug that into my phone app and then download the info from it. So it's really kind of a cool tool um, to use. And if you really like different tools and equipment like I do, then I don't know, maybe it'd be worth to experiment with. Uh, but for me, for troubleshooting and coming from a troubleshooting angle, I really like the power meter just because it gives me a measurement that I can actually quantify and then document and then make any adjustments that I may need to. So some adjustments I'm talking about, like with indoor growing, would be moving the lights closer to the plant canopy. So like this basil plant right here, if I was growing this under lights, if I use my par meter and let's say I'm looking for 200, so I'll bring this other graphic back up. So like PPFD. So if I'm looking for 200 micromoles per square meter per second, and I have my meter out there, like right by this basil plant, and I'm actually running like 75 micromoles per square meter per second, then I can either increase the light output by putting a stronger light. On the LED lights I have, I can turn the dimmer up because that's the nice thing about LEDs is they have well, the one I have has a dimmer switch on it, so I can adjust the intensity of it. Or on my T5 high output lights, I can't do a dimmer because it's full on all the time, but I can adjust the height from the lights to the canopy or where my plants are at. So that's how I use that tool is giving me some information to adjust the light in relation to the plants that are growing. And since this is the second year that I've used the LED system, I actually did. I can't remember if I shared this with you, but I'll share it with you now. I actually did destroy some pepper plants, and that was my learning curve, right? Because I was getting too aggressive. Like I said, the LEDs have a dimmer switch on them, so I knew something was going on, and I caught it before I wiped out like a lot of plants. But the pepper plants were starting. How can I can relate this to like a nitrogen deficiency. If you ever seen your plants where you're, you're starting to get a nitrogen deficiency, or they're basically running out of nitrogen, they're using it up. Plants will relocate that nitrogen. So you'll see it on the older leaves first, where those leaves will start to turn yellow, and then eventually the plant will just get rid of those leaves, and then it reallocates that nitrogen to the active growing part. So what happened on these tomato plants was, or excuse me, pepper plants is I started to see the yellowing, but then it got kind of white. So after I went and grabbed my power meter again, and then I realized that I had the dimmer up too high. So that's something too. If you ever see your plant leaves like bleaching is another way to describe it, or starting to turn white, it's probably what's happening is because the the machinery in the leaves it can't handle that intensity. So I was basically just giving it like way too much light intensity, and it wasn't able to handle it. Now, my strawberry plants that were already mature and fruiting, they took all of it. They were just fine. But the smaller pepper plants, they told me. That's the cool thing about plants is that even though they don't speak English like we do, we can still see from their feedback on how they're growing. Like, do they need more light? Do they need less light? Do they need more nitrogen? Do they need more water? Do they need more, less water? They're gonna have physical signs of what's going on. So if you don't have a par meter, that's perfectly fine. I'll show you this kind of like the street rules on how you can actually monitor the light of your plants if it's getting enough or getting too much. And if you have T5 high output or T5 fluorescent lights, like I still use, you can actually use the back of your hand to test for the light intensity. And by that is you can put your hand underneath the T5 high output lights, and when you start to feel the warmth, that's about the threshold of where those plants should probably be. So again, if I have my basil plant right here and I got my T5 high output lights above it, then if I put my hand where the canopy is for these plants, if I feel warmth on the back of my hand, then that's about the sweet spot for where the light needs to be. If it's too cold or you don't feel any heat, then you can move it closer. If it's hot and the plants are starting to like bend over, that's another clue too, is that the plants are telling you that, hey, I got too much light. They're trying to escape it. The difference that I found out between or difference between the fluorescent, the T5 high outputs, and a LED is that the LEDs run cool. So what I told you is not going to work with the LED system. That's one good thing about an LED light system is that they don't lose as much electricity to heat, so it makes them much more efficient. And that's another benefit to them because they're going to use less electricity versus like a T5 high output fluorescent bulb. But the big difference is the you can use that kind of guide that I just shared with you, and I didn't come up with that. I've heard this from others, and I liked it because it's just a very quick, easy check on if the the fluorescent lights are at an appropriate distance from the growing canopy of the plants. So that's that I can share with you. So we'll get rid of that one, and then we'll go to this graphic right here, where we get to the math. This is a good point to grab some coffee too. But now that we went over all these terms, so that DLI, that's just the total light in the day. And something I didn't put on the screen, but I'll share with you is we have those units of measurement. So with the PPFD, we had the micromole per square meter per second. And when we talk about the total quantity over a 24-hour period with the DLI, and I wrote some notes too, so I don't misspeak. Uh, with the daily light integral or the total amount, and really specifically, we're talking about the total amount of usable light that those plants are getting in a 24-hour uh, day. So that's really another way I think about DLI is how much usable light did these plants get over a 24-hour cycle, a 24-hour day. So with the DLI, you have the PPFD, so that's the first one that we talked about, times the hours of light. So I usually run my grow lights. It depends. Let's just say 14 hours. So somewhere around 14 hours is when I'm running those when I'm starting seeds. You can go more or less. It's really up to you, and it's really there's a lot of factors that go into this. It depends on how fast you want your plants to grow. And I think I'm going to share this little piece of information too. We have a lot of control over manipulating how our plants grow when they're indoors, like a lot of control. And that's one of the fun parts from my perspective is creating an environment to where I can speed up the plant growth or I can also slow down the plant growth. I can elongate the window of time to where that plant is going to be at a certain stage of growth before I need it to do something. And this is something I think I've talked a little bit in the past, but and I think I might do a whole live stream just on this because there's so much that goes into it. Uh, and it's maybe something that you haven't thought about before, but when we're growing indoors in a controlled environment, we have absolute control over how that plant's going to behave and grow. So the big things that are going to affect that plant's growth is light. And today we're talking about like light quantities. So intensity of light, the actual overall quantity, how much light that plant's getting in 24 hours, that's one variable. Temperature is another one. Temperature is huge on plant growth, and especially with certain plants like, I'll go back to the pepper plant. If we cool down the temperatures, and I'm not talking about like bring it down to the 40s, but if we cool down the temperature by 10 degrees, wherever those peppers are growing, it's going to significantly slow down the rate of growth for those plants. If we raise up the temperature higher than let's say 80 degrees, if we're trying to germinate pepper seeds, it's going to speed up the rate of those seeds germinating. And I could share this too. That's where I run my germination chamber. So I have a home built germination chamber. I have a simple heater in there, and I typically run it about 80 to 82 degrees for my germination for peppers and tomatoes. And different different varieties of peppers, different varieties of tomatoes will germinate at different times, but 80 to 82 is about where I run that. But back to what we're talking about with the plant growth. So light, temperature, and then also water and nutrients. Those control the rate of growth for a plant. So if we start manipulating any of those levers, we can either speed up or slow down the plant growth. And I'm gonna look in the chat because I see a lot going on. I don't want to lose any questions here. Oh, yeah. Jay from Ecology Today says singing in metric, just move the decimal. Yeah, that's absolutely. When I realized that, and then switching from units of measurement, that was one of my favorite parts too. It's very simple. Okay. And then Dave was mentioning the screen. I appreciate that too. So you're not going to see any photos here for a second, and they're going to come up here in just a bit. And I apologize for this. Uh, this is the step that I should have gotten before the show. So this won't happen again. I'm going to do push-ups when we get done with this. But I'm gonna get these pictures up so you guys can see what's going on with this. Okay. I'm gonna kind of flip through these. We're gonna talk about each one of these. So you should see the photos come up here in just a second. There's always like a 5 to 7 second delay between what I'm doing and what you guys see, but yeah, you'll see it. It's coming up now. So this first one I landed on, like I said, I'll leave names out. This is a company that specifically grow or builds systems for senior living communities. So But this first photo that came up, this is the drain. So it's basically a large tub, and then they mostly use peat moss, which that's fine. That's typically what's typically in the what's typically in potting soil. Okay, I was getting rid of the equation off the screen because it flipped it on me. But this is the drain that they had on it. When I saw that, I'm like, that's really interesting. Um, but just a plastic bag to catch any water runoff, that's one way to do it, I suppose. And then this right here is the underneath. And let's rotate this. Okay. So you can see where that drain is with the bag around it. And then they just had a shelf under here for holding any type of equipment or whatnot. Then this next photo, we'll get back to that in a second. But this is the photo I really wanted you to see. So this is the view that I saw of this grow bed. This is indoors too, but this is the view that I saw when I arrived, and it immediately became obvious that there's an issue here because I mean there's maybe half a dozen plants in here, but they're not looking they're not looking super happy here. So what I did was I looked to see what lights they had, and the lights they had were these guys right here. So two LED strips, and I didn't take a tape measure, so I can't show you exactly the height above where the plants were, but they're probably roughly about a yard or 3 feet above the where the growing canopy would be for those plants. So that right alone, like even my most powerful LED lights, I don't have them that high above the plant canopy. They'd have to be pretty strong lights to actually put out enough light intensity for those plants to have anything meaningful. So that's a pretty good shot of those LED strips. And then the last one that I want to show you, which we're going to spend a little time, is this right here. This is I gotta flip this for you, but this is this is my app. So Apogee is the manufacturer for the par meter that I use. And then right there at the bottom where it says 50.11, you'll recognize that because we talked about that at the beginning of the live stream. So um, back to that photosynthetic photon flux density, and then you look at the right of the mic or the 50.11, and you'll see the micromole per square meter per second. So that's why I wanted to go over the terms first. So like this makes more sense now. So if you ever use a par meter, you're going to see something very similar to this. And then also going back to what I was mentioning, if you ever buy some higher quality grow lights, whether they be LEDs or uh, T5 high outputs or something like that, you'll see that unit of measure, and then you'll see a number by it. So what I did is I put my par meter by a couple different spots on the grow bed by the growing plants or more idling, and then I I just took a couple snapshots to see what my par meter was picking up. So 50.11 micromoles per square meter per second is what my meter was picking up. So just to put that in relationship, for my T5 high outputs, again, I'll go back to my basil plant here because this is exactly what I use for my basil plant. So imagine my T5 output, high output fluorescent lights over the baby basil plants. I usually shoot for about 200. So 200 micromole per square meter per second. That's what the plants are receiving. And the ones that I'm showing you here in that grow bed is at 50.11. So a quarter of what I usually give my plants when they're growing indoors under fluorescence. So if we go to that math equation, uh, the DLI, now I have my calculator right here. You can follow along too if you got a calculator on your smartphone, or you can pencil this with the on paper. But the equation again is the ppfd, so that 50.11, and then we're going to multiply that by the hours of daylight. So giving these guys the benefit of the doubt, if I put in like 16 hours, so if we had those LEDs on for 16 hours, that would be the next part. So 51 times 16, and then we multiply that by 0.0036, and then we get a number. So the number I have is this is going to be flipped around. It's 2.9376. So 2.9376. So that's 2.9376, or we'll just call it 2.94, and that's mole per meter square per day. So that's the amount of usable light those plants got in one day. Now, the 2.9 doesn't mean anything unless we actually have like a reference number for what should these plants be getting to have optimal amount of light for growth. So I can give you some numbers on that. For seedlings, so back to my basil plant, if I was growing that and as a seedling, so this plant's quite a bit older. It's been growing for a while, a couple months. But if that was in the seedling stage, I'd be shooting for about 8 to 12 moles per square meter per day. So you can see already that the light setup that's on this system that's in a senior living community right now, those lights are not cutting it at all. I even if I was growing seedlings or some type of plant that didn't need a lot of light, there's no way they're going to be able to thrive because they just don't have the light intensity. Uh, it's just not there. So the way you could correct this, and that's why I was brought in, is to come up with some ideas, is we'd have to change out the light fixture for something that's stronger, or we'd have to drop the lights. I'll go back to this picture so you can see his skin. We'd have to drop the lights. We'd have to lower the lights closer to the canopy of the plants. That's those are the two solutions there. More powerful LEDs, or lower those lights so the plants could actually use the light off them. Now I didn't show this with the camera, but I did take a shot up close. So I put the power meter like right up by the LEDs to see what's the maximum amount these lights can put out, because I was curious, because if they're not putting out enough, then there's no way we could even use that. So up like right up about by the light, they're about 250 micromoles per square meter per second. So what I'm saying is that these LEDs would have to be like right on they would need to be about right here for these plants to get any usable light out of them to actually grow. So so that's that. How did you do? Did anybody do the calculations with me uh, with the equation? Yeah, so Jay saw it, looked at the light height and went too high. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, this is a great question. So Jay's asking what app was acting like a light meter. So I appreciate you asking this. So this is just a bit of clarification on the equipment. So The par meter is by Apogee, and then the app is from Apogee also. So it's the manufacturer app that they use with their equipment. So they have different types of par meters that they sell, but they'll all link up to the app. And uh, they have a couple different configurations for them. I have the one that has the meter itself. It's got I think it's a 3 meter long cable, and then it has a Bluetooth device. So the Bluetooth device allows it to connect wirelessly with my smartphone, and then I'm able to see in real time what the par meter is seeing, and then I'm also able to download from that device. So what I'm saying is the par meter works with the app, and then the app is just used a tool that we can use to interface with the device itself. So I'm not. I just want to clarify that because I'm not actually using my phone as any type of par meter. I actually have the par meter separate, and then the app is what's used to interface with the par meter. Yeah, thank you, Jay. So putting out the low light shade plants 6 to 10 moles per meter square per day. Yep. Okay, this is a good question too. So Dave asks, I guess you also have to be careful how intense the light can be as well being in the senior living facility, or is that a concern? Uh, it's a concern. It's something I thought about, and I think that's probably why this manufacturer went with the LEDs because they run cooler. And this system I'm actually showing you, this is in a memory care dementia care facility. So this community is multi-resident community that has assisted living. They also have independent living, and then they also have dementia care, memory care. So the dementia care, memory care, that's who has these systems. But I'm fairly confident that's why the manufacturer went with the LEDs, just so if somebody was curious to touch the LED, they wouldn't get burned. Um, but at the same time, the LEDs need to put out enough light so that the plants can actually grow. I think from what I was seeing on the system, it looks like they were more trying to trying to put out enough light so that the plants could kind of idle. Because after viewing how their business model worked, they didn't have this set up to have like actively growing plants. So the way these customers interface with the system is they purchase plants from a larger plant nursery who then ships them directly to whatever community has this system, and then they just transplant those grown plants or mature plants into that bed. But even still, like doing the calculations, um, even with the mature plant, that plant really doesn't have enough light to even idle in place. It's really going to struggle. It's probably going to get elongated, like you saw in some of those plants. And there's definitely not going to be any thriving in that grow bed, as we saw from the earlier photos. Yeah. So uh, Jay at Ecology today put out some reference points for other types of plants. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. But hopefully this was helpful for you. If you've never heard about this, you don't have to necessarily worry about this if you're growing outdoors, like you have a in-ground garden or a raised bed, or even container plants outdoors. It only comes into play when we're trying to manufacture a grow environment that's not natural. So here in Minnesota, if we want to grow say strawberry plants in the middle of January, which I do, and that's a lot of fun, especially when I was able to get them to flower and fruit. And I think I'm gonna come back to that point in a sec or a minute. But if we want to grow plants indoors, then this is something we should be aware of. just to make sure that the plants have enough light to actively grow. Um, so that's all I want to say about that. Now, back to the strawberry plant. So your perennial fruiting plants, and I'm using the strawberries example because I woke my strawberry plants up out of hibernation, I think early February this year. Pretty sure it's February. It might have been the end of January. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But this is the very cool part about growing like I do, uh, is because I love to experiment with different types of plants and really, this is going to sound pretty crazy, but I'd like to put myself in the plant's shoes and think about what does this plant need. So for an annual plant where it finishes its life cycle in 1 year, what does it need from the point that it germinates to the point that it goes to seed and finishes its life cycle? Or back to the strawberry example, what does this strawberry plant need from the point in which I either plant a seed? So alpine strawberries, if you've never done that, that's a pretty cool experience to plant a strawberry seed and then watch the vegetative part grow and then it flowers and then it fruits and then you get to eat the alpine strawberries. Or in my case, I purchase large quantities of bare root plants from the wholesale nurseries. So for like June bearing strawberries in particular, All Star is a variety that I use frequently for my programming. But what does that all-star June-bearing strawberry plant need from the point that I plant the bare root to the point that I can actually harvest strawberries off of it? So one of the big things it needs is that after it gets done with its first year of establishing itself, so it's basically expanding the roots, putting the vegetative foliage up on top. The June bearings won't, well, they typically won't flower the first year. They might though. I've seen that too. They might throw up a couple of flowers, but there's not going to be any like large quantities of fruit on them. So after that first year it gets established, the cooler season comes, it goes dormant. So that's cool thing with the strawberry plants too is you'll start to see the leaves turn colors just like the maple trees outside or the oak trees. And then it goes to sleep for the winter. But there's actually more stuff going on during the winter that you may or may not have heard before. And that's the exciting part of, from my perspective, is this is like the nerd geek stuff that I love really digging into is how does that plant work? So once that strawberry plant goes to sleep, and this applies to all your other fruiting perennials, whether it be like raspberries or blueberries, any fruiting perennial plant, any perennial in general, actually, that's deciduous. So it drops its leaves and it goes to sleep in the winter. Once this happens, all the energy from that plant go down into the roots. So that's the first cool thing that I learned, uh, really digging into horticulture, because I was always curious, like, how do these plants operate over the winter? They drop all their leaves, but they store all their energy in their roots underground. And as a side note, this is why it's important in the state of Minnesota and why I've seen problems with perennials over the last few years, because we haven't had a lot of snow. We've had very dry winters. The benefit of that is I don't have to pull a snowblower out, but the downside is that layer of snow that the plants use as a blanket, insulation blanket, haven't had that for the last couple of few years. So uh, the underground parts of the like strawberry plant, if they're exposed to the dry and the cold temperatures of Minnesota winter, it can damage the plant. It can kill the plant. And this is one of the reasons why I lost hundreds of strawberry plants a couple years ago, is that they just didn't have that insulation blanket for them. Uh, Not only does the plant store its energy or its food down in underground in its roots, but there's also a biological clock that starts. So once it goes to sleep or hibernate, it starts the biological clock. And we need so many hours uh, for this plant to chill before it breaks dormancy or comes out of hibernation in the spring. And this is a very cool topic that I I experimented with this last year because I wanted to know, can I bring these plants out of hibernation earlier, and I did. The way I was able to get around this, and you may see some different information depending on what source you'll see, but if you like Google chilling hours for strawberry plants or any type of perennials, you'll see different collegiate documentation on this. But depending on the plant species or variety, they need a determined or a predetermined amount of hours of chilling. So 20 below zero here in Minnesota is not going to be effective for a strawberry plant. And this is something interesting too when I learned about this is we're really talking about, and it depends on the resource that you look at, but we're talking about 30 degrees to about 40 degrees, kind of in that sweet spot. Um, Cumulative hours that that plant needs before it's going to break dormancy. And this is all survival. This is how these plants have been able to survive for millennia, is because they're pretty smart. They figured out how these weather patterns go. But how I was able to manipulate this is I put all my container strawberries into my insulated shop. So it's not heated, but it is insulated. So it typically stays about 15 degrees Fahrenheit above the outside ambient temperature. And because of that, it's kind of like a kind of a cooler for my perennial plants. And that's how I was able to, I don't want to say like game the system, but I was able to give the strawberry plant the amount of chilling hours it needed before it would wake up out of hibernation. So, and I brought it up out of hibernation, like I said, I think it's the end of January, February. And then once it came out, put it underneath the grow lights, and then it's off to the races. It's now coming into its vegetative stage. And then after I think a month or so, it was starting to go into flowering and then fruiting, and it's been flowering and fruiting since then. So if you're curious to know what a strawberry plant could do, I've had that plant flowering and fruiting since I think about mid-March, mid to late March. And I needed it to flower and fruit at that time because March and then April is when I was going around making all my sales calls. So I had a flowering and fruiting strawberry plant that I could take into a boardroom or to an office and do like a hand pollination activity for like a director or executive director or activities director and give them a taste of what I'd be doing with their residents. So um, I gotta check out some comments here. So Jay mentioned fake sun indoors, some thought equals some thought and planning. Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Bowtie Life says in my mom's last year that they put in a garden in our assisted living facility. That's fantastic. Love to hear that. It's smaller one, but extremely well run. Yeah, they don't have to be large. I've seen some very small, like maybe three, maybe even two planter raised beds. But what was awesome about that is that the staff was involved. I guess you could say ownership. So they actively brought residents out there to, well, basically help them through in the memory care, dementia care to take care of their plants. So it could be very meaningful and beneficial to them. Okay, Jay from Ecology Today says I used chopped leaves on perennial plants as an insulation layer in the late autumn. We are still getting enough cold here in Canada so far. Okay. Yep. Yeah, I'm curious for you watching. Have you heard of chilling hours or chill hours before today? Is that something that you've thought about? Um, is it something that you think about when you're planting a, say, perennial fruiting plant where you grow? Drop that in the comments too. I'm curious. But it's all fascinating how all this works. Um, and I was pretty stoked earlier this year when I was successfully able to bring that strawberry plant out of dormancy when I was asking it to, because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to, I wasn't sure if I gave it enough time. I was sort of calculating just back of the napkin math, but when it broke dormancy and I saw the first couple leaves grow, I'm like, man, this is pretty cool because now I got a system, a repeatable system. And that's the other thing too with what I do is as much as I can, I try to standardize or systematize what I do. So there's always going to be a little bit of variables because after all, I can't control all the variables all the time unless I'm inside. But even then, it's harder to control the humidity because the outside humidity affects it, and these aren't sealed environments. But then when I'm growing outside in the high tunnel or a different location of the property, the seasonality changes every year, and that's what I can't control. So I can kind of proactively think about what it might do and like set the plants up for success or have backup plans in case I have to like move stuff or modify stuff. But it is pretty cool at that level to be able to manipulate the environment for bringing strawberries out earlier than what they normally would um, in Minnesota. Okay, this is what I was interested in. So Dave from Bowtie Life says we have to consider chill hours here in Destin, Florida. We selected our two peach trees very carefully based on chill hour requirements. Fantastic. Yep. Thank you for sharing that. Jay from Ecology today says I bought fruit trees in the last 5 years and chill hours and other new info was important. Yeah. So typically up here in the northern states, we pay attention to the USDA hardiness zone. And just for clarification, that's not really what we're talking about for the chill hours. The USDA hardiness zone is more about the maximum or the lowest temperature that those plants are going to experience in the middle of winter. And that's a helpful tool to determine what perennial plant's going to live or be really upset with the Minnesota winter. So like my two plants that or types of plants that I'm playing with this summer are the ginger and turmeric, and they've been doing great. But those are tropical plants, so they're gonna have to come indoors later this summer, and that's gonna be exciting too, because this will be the first time I've grown tropical plants inside like that. This could be interesting, and there's probably gonna be a learning curve too. So I'll share the journey all along the way. Oh, nice. So mid Pride Peach takes about 250 to 350 hours, and our El Grande takes 300 to 400. Fantastic information. Yeah, very good. So, all what I do remember from my horticulture class, where we actually kind of dug into this topic, and I can share is that uh, the way I understand it is if during this biological clock that the plant is watching, if we get too extreme a temperature, so if we have, and this is the last thing I want to chat about or share because I think it's valuable information, is that let's say we have a perennial fruit plant and it's met its biological clock for minimum chill hours, and we have a like a weird freak heat wave here in Minnesota. Let's say like maybe late March, somewhere around there. and the plant says, "Oh, it's time to wake up." So it starts to do its thing, comes back, vegetative growth, and then we go back into the normal temperatures where we go below freezing. I've seen this many times with a lot of our perennial trees, where they'll get frost damage, or it won't necessarily kill the plants because usually that late in the winter, early spring, uh, it's not going to do like permanent damage. But I have seen a lot of seasonal damage to perennial trees and bushes just because we had those freak temperature swings. The plant already met its requirements, came out of dormancy, but then it got whacked by a winter storm. Or in the case, this hasn't happened in a while, but I've seen two major winter snowstorms in mid-May, and that's eye-opening when you see that. I appreciate that, Dave. Dave says if not found him, check out Christopher's channel in Norway. I did check him out. I think I subscribed to his channel too. Um, yeah, I appreciate that tip too. I might have to revisit his content when we get later this summer. But anyway, for all of you joining me today, I appreciate you tuning in. I would love to know, did you like the flow today? Did you enjoy the mathematical equation? How I kind of lined up some theory with some actual practical experience? Like this is actually what I did, the process I did earlier this year. Did you enjoy that? If you did, put that in the comments. I'd like to hear because I'm thinking about doing more of this type of these live streams coming out in the future. Just taking the science collegiate level information and then kind of tied it into like everyday practical, like this is how we could actually apply a crazy term like ppfd into something that we can actually use, quantify, and then try to do some troubleshooting and come up with a solution to that. But anyway, that's it for the live stream today. I appreciate you all joining me today, and have a great week. I hope you're enjoying lots of fresh vegetables and fruit from your gardens, and I look forward to growing with you through the rest of the summer and hearing about your experiences this year. So until next time, take care. I'll see you next weekend.